Hey everybody, it's Norm from Tested.
And it's Jeremy from Tested.
Welcome to Projections, where this week we're doing a project.
It's good that we're finally bringing one to Projections, Norm. We do a lot of projects here on Tested.
Yes, and in the VR space, a lot of people have done custom builds to modify their headsets, specifically the optics. There's, of course, a very famous Gear VR mod where you swap out the lenses. But for you and me, maybe what's most relevant is prescription lenses.
A lot of people buy glasses to fit into a headset. I know Will Smith did. That's a convenient option if you're willing to make your glasses small enough in order to fit into a headset, because it can be somewhat of a struggle. There's also the question of maybe scratching your lenses. Yeah. My mom has a Go, and she actually scratched her lenses by using it so often in the headset.
With glasses, lens on lens, right? Polycarbonate on polycarbonate. Yeah. Oculus also has partnerships with third-party lens manufacturers that make specific lenses that you can just slot in and snap in for things like the Go, but there is also a DIY option.
That's right. So it's actually based on one of the third-party partners that Oculus partnered with for the Rift. And so somebody basically looked at that design and said, well, we can do that. I have a 3D printer. I can print the frame for that. I just need to know what lenses to use. So user Jegstad over on Thingiverse gave away these files for free. And it is this frame here. And it works with a very particular lens. So he gives you the part number from Zenni Optical. If you buy that lens, if you submit your prescription, you'll get the glasses back. They look like this. They're great for cosplaying as a wizard.
Harry Potter style.
Nothing cooler than a 40-something pretending to be an 11-year-old boy.
Okay.
Once you're done with that, though, you basically dismantle this. You take the lenses out. You have to be careful to get the orientation right, like which is your left lens and your right lens, which one's forward and which is up and down, and simply move them into this frame, and then, hypothetically, it sits behind the facial interface that you take out of the Rift. So it's not even actually right up against your face. It's actually behind the facial interface. It goes like that.
And so the optics on the Rift itself still sit behind it.
They do.
But you're not adding any extra depth between you and the facial interface, because that looks like it's still behind it as well.
I think they probably end up being where your glasses would fall, but it's permanent. It's in there, and they're not moving against the glass, so there's no concern about scratching, and they obviously fit ideally.
So we're gonna do this right now. You bought these from, you said, Zenni Optical.
They're $10 glasses.
$10 glasses with a standard prescription, no fancy super nearsighted or farsightedness, and we're gonna disassemble it using just a Phillips head screwdriver.
Yep.
Okay, so we've popped the lenses out, super easy. They really just fall out as soon as you unscrew them from the frames. Very tiny screws, keep those around if you ever want to put these glasses back together. And we know we have our right eye and our left eye. And I guess what's tricky is knowing the orientation of the mount.
So if it goes like that, this is the way it goes. So we're going to have the left eye over here and the right eye over there.
Now, this is just press fit. No super glue needed. It's a little bit of flex here. They fit perfectly from the back. Actually has a little bit of, there's a lip on it, so it doesn't go all the way through. Now, you also showed me there's two versions of this.
He did this redesign here, which is supposed to be more of a snap fit. I don't understand why necessarily, because you're clearly snap fitting here. Maybe it's a little more tension here, so maybe they hold in a little bit better. I understand that this one has a bit more of a nose area, and I have a big nose. So I'm gonna use this one just in case. And also, if it is at all loose, the instructions said that once it's in place and in the headset, it actually compresses and it should be okay.
Well, one quick test we can do is put this up against your face without your glasses, just to see if it is clear. The world is clear?
The world is perfectly clear, a little smudgy.
Yep.
But now let's place it on this and see how it goes.
So now you're fitting the 3D printed mount into the facial interface.
Okay, so the top budges up against this little lip, and the bottom appear to have these little ridges that that ride this bottom rail. There, look at that. So that's actually locked in there. I like that design.
And one side of it, there are two ridges. You can see them in the second version. Those two bars will go on top of the rail. One goes on top of the foam and one on top of the plastic part of the rail. And it's pretty sturdy. How does that look on your face? Let's see if it works.
Yeah, no problem. A little smudgy, but good.
Great. And then theoretically, we'll pop this in, and that should be a perfect fit into the headset. I'm really curious as to see whether this adds any extra depth. Because if it did, that would be a decrease in your field of view.
Look at that.
But no. Huh.
Yep. So the lenses, they are they touching? They're not, are they?
They're not touching.
I mean, they're a millimeter apart.
Yeah, yeah.
But, I mean, obviously there's nothing on here, but feels normal. That's cool.
That is a very cool.
$10 solution, $15 with shipping.
If you have a 3D printer.
Seriously, you're talking about an $70, $80 investment for the commercial product. If you do have a 3D printer, I recommend the solution.
Right, and then you can also, of course, keep these lenses. Theoretically, whatever future headset comes out, someone might design an adapter for that, but they're also just $10 lenses.
That's a good point. And you always have these in case you want to, cosplay.
Yes, you're 11-year-old wizard for Halloween.
Yes, I'm a wizard.
Perfect. Thank you out there to Jegstad, who did the 3D modeling and put the files online for these adapters. You can find links to all the info in the description below. We also have a game review this week for you. This came out last week across Rift, Vive, and also PSVR. It's a game called A Fisherman's Tale.
It's an escape room, isn't it? It's a puzzle game, but it has a different theme that I like. I think it does benefit from being in VR. It's one that if you did in 2 dimensions on a flat screen or something like that, it wouldn't have nearly the same impact. And it teases your mind in the same, evokes Portal in a way, not in the gameplay sense, but in the mind-twisting kind of sense.
Yeah, so it can be a room scale game. There are a couple different ways to play it, room scale standing or even sitting if you're in PSVR. But the idea is that you're a fisherman that's inside your lighthouse. And in the lighthouse, the room, you have a miniature of that very lighthouse because, I like this fisherman, he's a model maker.
Yeah, he's built the whole thing from scratch.
Yes. And it has not only a representation of the lighthouse, it is the very lighthouse you are standing in because due to computer wizardry, you have recursive environments. Interactions that you have with the miniature happen as you look over your shoulder because there's a giant version of yourself right behind you.
And if you look down into the model, there's a miniature version of yourself.
And it goes down 2 or 3 levels.
You are caught between these 2 dimensions of smaller than real life and larger than real life. And you can take anything from your world and you can throw it out the window and the little guy will throw it out the window. And now you've got a miniature version that you can pick up and you can do the opposite. You can take things out of the small world and they're now the small version of the thing that was in your world.
Yes, or you can place an object in your world into the miniature and then a giant version of that thing.
That's right, because it's recursive. Like it does go into the small world, and then also you see from your periphery it's coming down, and like the gigantic magazine is now taking over your entire living room.
So conceptually, super interesting. This idea, like you said, almost a Portal, almost a Braid-esque puzzle design, where instead of the temporal nature of those games, here it's a spatial nature.
Right. It makes you think in ways you haven't thought before.
Now, unfortunately, the game's a little short, and how many puzzles there are limits the ambition of this game. I think there are only about 8 to 10 real puzzles here. There's a great voice cast. The whole thing's a narrative story, a little bit of a surreal, dreamlike story. Don't want to give too much away.
I mean, it already starts out with the surreal premise. However, I thought that they were going to sort of stick with that premise, but it gets weirder and weirder. Definitely surreal is the right adjective for this game.
Yes, and my only disappointment with this is that I wish it went further. I wish there were more puzzles. Like a game like Portal, a game like Braid teaches you mechanics and then has you use those mechanics over and over again in new and interesting ways. Here, you're really only doing those mechanics a few times, which is neat, really neat, but I think there could have been a lot more game there. I beat in about an hour.
They flesh out the game with narrative, and there's a lot of introduction to this game. It takes about 20 minutes just to get into it. They're very proud of the storytelling and the voice casting and the writing and the arc, and to their credit, they do a great job with that. However, I did feel myself longing to get to the gameplay. Even once the game started, there are then again periods where there's just storytelling and the voiceover and you're getting into the zone. And I mean, it's all well and good, but with VR games in particular, I do feel like I'd like to get to the interactivity.
Right. I did feel like story got in the way of just more game in this sense. It's a small game, really easy to get through. I did it both sitting and standing. You have shortcuts to extend your arms. You can grab things that are further away from you.
Let's talk about that. I haven't seen that I recall a game do that. Like it's always been things are within reach or they're not. But this one, you hit a button on your touch controller and your hand just zooms out. And you now have this hand that's projected away from you. And it's a way to avoid having to have room scale, I think, essentially.
Yeah.
It is you can play it standing. So what do you think about that? Is that a good solution? For me, it kind of broke the immersion.
It worked functionally.
Yeah.
It let me reach the places where I couldn't because of my space constraints.
Yeah.
But it took away the hand presence.
Right.
Like the moment the hand detached from me, it was almost like having a grabber arm. And I would have enjoyed seeing the grabber arm, the extension, Inspector Gadget style.
That's interesting.
But because it was a floating hand, I felt detached from it. And being detached from the physical embodiment, I guess, is part of the game in some sense. Later on, you're doing mirror effects where you're puppeting yourself essentially in the smaller version of yourself, except using your large hands. So maybe that's part of the design. I just felt that that part was, from a VR perspective, took me a little bit out of the experience.
Yeah. Conceptually, I wanted to make eye contact with myself.
And you can't.
And you can't.
You can't.
Like that was really kind of interesting because everywhere you look, if you see yourself, you're just looking the other direction because you're looking that direction.
Yeah. Yeah, really fun concept. I agree with you completely that it is a game that really benefits from being in VR. Presence makes this work. Technically, it could be done with a gamepad, with even touch controls on a flat screen, but being in the room, literally looking over your shoulder, is a cool thing to do in this game.
And also, we didn't mention, as you solve each chapter, it opens up the world to new spaces. And I was relieved to see that. I didn't get that when I first downloaded it. I thought it was all going to be in that one room. But each chapter, you unlock a new door and you expand the game world, and it's not just that new space. You need to use the whole space, and the puzzles become a little bit more complex. You're super good at puzzle games, so I understand you said that you had an easy time getting through it. I was stuck once or twice. I didn't cheat, but it took me 5 minutes, 10 minutes in order to solve some of these puzzles.
Plenty of hints. I wouldn't call it a game that's great for kids.
You can turn off the hints.
Oh yeah, you can, yes. I wouldn't call it a game that's necessarily great for kids, but it is a trippy experience that is uniquely VR.
Yeah.
So that's A Fisherman's Tale, out now on all the gaming platforms. And that is it for this week's episode. We'll be back next week, I think, with some AR talk, so stay tuned for that. Thanks for watching.
Bye.